All right. Well, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on what is now our second Choice Chat with the Tennessee Federation for Children. I'm Shaka Mitchell, our state director, and we are really happy to have some folks from Brainerd Baptist School today. One of the things that we're trying to do with Choice Chats is highlight some of the bright spots that we see happening in K-12 education around Tennessee. So despite the fact that 2020 has thrown us all for a major loop, and maybe worse, we know that there are still some really good things happening out there, good things happening for kids, good things happening at schools, and by educators and by parents. And so our goal is to really highlight some of those stories and let educators and parents in other parts of the state learn from some of the good things that are happening. So today, helping us do that, it's Dr. Sean Corcoran from Brainerd Baptist. And then we also have a few parents that you can see, but Kate Coram and Jennifer Pond. And so just want to say hello to everybody. And I'll start just by welcoming Sean. Thanks for joining us, and tell us a little bit about Brainerd Baptist.
Sure. Thanks for the invitation, Shaka. And Brainerd Baptist, we are beginning our third week of school. We are a pre-K through fifth grade school, which is pretty common in the Chattanooga market. Unless you're a K-12, most of our schools are typically kindergarten through fifth grade. We have right around 300 students. This is our 67th year of doing education, and just a phenomenal school, really a leader in regards to best practices and how children learn and those type of things. And so it's an exciting time for our school. We have just finished a construction project. I say we've just finished. We're still waiting on doors. We have got new classrooms with no doors in them, which is great, and new office space, which I'm in now, with no doors. But they're supposed to be here this week as well. But new library, STEM, learning center, 3 new classrooms, and then a new administrative office space as well. So our students got to come back. We left, our last day of school was Friday, March the 13th. And we had started construction that week. And so when our students came back a couple of weeks ago, they got to come back to some new spaces, and it's really been great to see them get to come in and see all this new stuff.
Yeah, that's great. Congratulations. I imagine, as hard as it's been to have an empty school building there in the spring, it probably made some of that construction a little easier.
You know, it did. It was in 3 phases. And obviously, we were working in a part of the building. We share, we are a ministry of Brainerd Baptist Church, and 2 separate entities, but we work closely with them. And it was in a part of the building that we did not use, that the church used. And so we started that, and the rest of the project wasn't going to really take off until school got out. And so obviously when the decision was made not to come back, because if you remember back in March, most of the schools took off for what we thought was going to be a 2 or 3 week break,
extended spring break,
and then it ended up going 9 weeks. And so we were able to expedite the process a little bit once that decision was made, and start construction in some class areas about a month sooner. And so, yeah, it did have its advantages, certainly, that we weren't necessarily prepared for, but yeah.
Well, giving the reminder about what March was like and how we thought that was going to be an extended spring break, and then it has been extended and then extended again and extended multiplied by 3, is probably giving all the parents watching like some PTSD a little bit. But let me just introduce or ask Kate and Jennifer to if you would introduce yourself. So you've got students at Brainerd Baptist. Would love to just hear, what grade levels, and is this your first student, first year, been there a long time? Kate, let's start with you.
Okay. All right. So I'm Kate Coram. I have twin 5-year-olds in their first year in K-5 at Brainerd Baptist. They previously were at a daycare pre-K center, and we have been overjoyed with their first week or 2 of school. So school life in general is new to us, but it's been awesome.
And so twin, well, hats off to you already.
Right.
Yeah. So twin 5-year-olds. And then that's an all-day kindergarten.
Yes. Yep. So they're there from 8 o'clock ish until 2:30, and then sometimes an aftercare depending on work stuff.
Yep. Yep. Okay. And Jennifer, what about you?
We've been at Brainerd Baptist with my now fourth grader since she was in K4, and then we have our youngest, her first year this year in K4. So I've got two.
Great. All right. So then you can really speak to how about that new building?
It's a great improvement, and it's been very exciting, especially for my oldest, because they really took time to tell the kids what's going to come, and to transition into all the new spaces and activities they're going to be able to take advantage of.
Yeah. And Sean, I've been to your school before, and so you've got a pretty nice campus that you sit on there. Is this going to give Brainerd Baptist School the ability to serve more students eventually, or what?
No, we're not at capacity, but we're close. The design, it was really more strategic in layout. We have almost 100,000 square feet on 3 levels in this building. And obviously the church uses a large portion of it as well. And so this was more about right sizing location, long-term of offices, and then really just adding some things to our program. Whenever you share a space with a church, there's always the question over space. I jokingly say space in a church related school is like oceanfront property. You're limited on how much there is. And so, we did some strategic moves between the two organizations to better really fit the organizations. And a part of that was we went from being on 3 floors to only being on 2 floors. And then completely, built a new library. And then the other 2 parts were new for us. We had a STEM center, but it didn't have sinks. And when you're doing dissections and experiments and things of that nature, sinks are important. And so our new state-of-the-art STEM lab, and we say STEM instead of STEAM because art is its own program at Brainerd Baptist that's phenomenal. And so all of our students 1st through 5th grade go to STEM as like a fine arts class. And so the new construction has this new state-of-the-art STEM space. And we also have a learning center, which we have 3 academic counselors on staff, and their space was just lacking. It was an old closet for lack of better description. And so they now have a specific space where they can work one-on-one. There's 3 rooms in this learning center for working with students. And then we have folks that come on campus and do occupational therapy, speech therapy, counseling, all sorts of academic, issues are dealt with in this space. And we now have a specific space for that is really, it's a feather in our cap as far as a new learning space that we were doing it before, but we were kind of doing it wherever we could find an empty room. And now it's a designated, really, really nice space for it.
Well, congratulations. And
yeah.
So one of the things then that I guess has been really top of mind is not just this new space, but you've got kids in the building now, right? So you said that
we do.
This is starting week 2 or the end of week 2?
We're starting our 3rd week in school.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about, and then so Sean, I want to hear what you're doing kind of from the school administration standpoint, but then I want to hear from Jennifer about, the differences in how it looks from say years past. How are you keeping kids and faculty safe, right? That's just top of mind for everybody. So what does that look like for y'all?
You can what if yourself to death with scenarios of what if this happens or what if this happens. We surveyed our parents back in the summer that went through what we would call our distance learning. And I will say this, we were a little bit ahead of the curve. We had already done some training and we're ready to go day 1. some schools in our area missed some time. They had to figure out what they were going to do and how they were going to do it. And that required time. And so we had already started, a large group of our faculty went to NAIS, the annual conference at the end of February. And we spent some time there brainstorming, okay, what if this happens? What if we didn't think we were going to go the last quarter of the year into distance learning, but we had kind of started looking at what that looked like. And so when we switched to the distance learning, we thought it would be for 2 or 3 weeks. And as everybody knows, it ended up being for 9 weeks, ended up being the last quarter of the year. And so we were getting data and feedback from parents. And even that process, we started it with the mindset of this needs to be on demand. It doesn't need to be live, because these children are more than likely going to be at grandparents' house or a caregiver, because mom and dad are still going to be working. And so, if you've got a younger student, they've got to be able to do it when mom and dad can help them do it. And so we went 100% on demand with our distance plan, and we did it as well as it could be done. But the reality is, in an independent school, when parents are paying tens of thousands of dollars in some cases for their children to go to school, their distance doesn't work for us long term. And so while our teachers did a phenomenal job at it, you still, when you serve the ages that we do, you've got to have a parent sitting next to that second grader, sitting next to that kindergarten student, doing it with them. And so as we got feedback, as we surveyed our families, overwhelmingly, our parents said, we want our kids back in school. And because we're an independent school, I think it's important that you've got to give some thought process of, okay, we're charging this tuition. We've got to be able to meet a need for our parents. And so we developed a plan this summer, and we're the only school in our area that has this, that we have a plan to start on campus, which we do. We offered virtual for our families. We had 18 students sign up to go virtual. That number, after the first full week of school, was down to 13. 5 of those had already come back on campus. And so we were offering virtual and on-campus learning for those families that didn't necessarily feel like they were ready for their child to come back. But then we'd also put in a plan where if things get as bad as they could, and of course, hindsight is 2020. Things weren't really bad in March, especially in Chattanooga. Things have gotten worse as far as case numbers and things of that nature. But, knowing what we know now, we probably wouldn't handle it the same way we did in March, but we didn't know. At that time, we all thought the world was coming to an end. Every school across the state shut down, and we did what we were supposed to do. We wanted to come up with a plan that would allow us to do education if we had to go to that again. So we have what we're calling a flex learning plan, that if the governor was to shut down all the public schools like he did back in March, we would revert to our flex plan, which would basically cut our day to 3.5 hours, and half of our students would come in the morning, the other half in the afternoon. We would provide childcare for our families that are still working, and it would allow our teachers, the feedback that we got from parents was, we pay y'all to teach, and we can't do this long term. We're not cut out for homeschooling. We're not cut out. I've got gifts and abilities, but teaching my child is not my gift. And so we wanted to develop a plan that really allowed our teachers to do what they're called to do and what they're experts at doing, and that's teaching. And so right now, if things were to get bad enough where we had to shut down, we would revert to that flex learning option. But right now we're on campus, and it's created a lot of work. There's a lot of extra things that are happening, but the feedback has been almost 100% positive. The interesting thing that you've got to do, and I'll let both parents talk about this, is we have found ourselves in the middle of a topic that's become political, that we don't have any desire to be political. Our goal is to have kids on our campus learning, but there are a number of our parents who are 100% against masks of any sort. And then there are parents that are 100%, they want their children in mask every day. And so we are trying to do what the CDC and the health department has asked us to do, but also be sensible and think through what's best for students. And in our mind, a 3 or a 4-year-old in a mask all day is not only not what's best for them, it's not possible. And so we have what we would call a hybrid mask policy. Our students wear masks when they're coming and going and when they're moving throughout the building. But once they get set at their desk, they've got partitions, they can take their mask off. And it's really worked well for us. But I would love to hear our parents' take on that as well.
Yeah. Kate, you want to jump in?
I'll go. Yeah. So one thing I did not realize it was going to happen that I've been very pleasantly surprised with is my twins are in separate classes. And so they have a little bit different setup physically and different arrangements with their teachers. So my son's class, he has one other table mate, one kid. He goes, he sits at the table with that kid. He does his activities with with that same kid. He goes to his centers with that kid, so that in the event that one of them was exposed or a family member was exposed, only these two kids are at risk. So as much as possible, I mean, there are playground activities and walking in a line and things of that sort, but direct contact in the classroom has been limited to a certain number of kids. And that to me was a pleasant surprise that I wasn't really aware of. Maybe I was made aware and just wasn't consciously thinking of it. But that's been pleasant. And honestly, with 5-year-olds, I was worried about masks. I'm completely pro mask, but I was worried about my kids' behavior, keeping a mask on their face, the battle that was going to cause the teachers. And the unrealistic side of me thinks it'd be great if they wore masks all the time, but that's just not possible. They're 5.
Yeah.
But every day we pull up and they pull that mask on their face. Every day they come out and they've got that mask on their face. If there are pictures sent to me with their friends near them, they have masks on their face. My kids have been they've been religious about their masks, and it's obviously because it's been made to be a positive experience, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, no, to your point, as I've got a 5-year-old myself, my youngest is 5. And so, I think about all the trick-or-treaters when they come, and it soon, if you can believe it, it'll be trick-or-treat, Halloween time soon. But I think about all the trick-or-treaters that come around, and what's the first thing they do as soon as they get their candy? They turn around and they put their mask on top of their head and walk, right? That's when candy's at stake. That's a lot at stake. Imagine when it's just going through the normal school day. So no, I appreciate that. And it sounds like they're adjusting, your kids are adjusting well to that. It's almost like a micropod, a pod within a classroom to keep them, distanced and safe. So Jennifer, what's that look like? I mean, particularly your 4th grader has got some years of school experience. And so how's that been for that child?
We talked about it a lot before school started. One thing I admire about Dr. Corcoran and his staff is they do not mind to pivot when they need to pivot. We can get an email, and if something changes with the state or something changes information-wise to where they think a better plan is needed, we will get an email with a changed plan. And I really respect that they don't mind to go back. So with my daughter, we're very open in our house, and I'm like, this is our plan right now until there's more knowledge, because we don't have the knowledge on this. And she has been fine in the mask. We just got glasses this week, so her optometrist showed her how to tuck the mask up under her glasses, and she said it's been fine. She does not mind the partitions in the classroom. They have, from my understanding, they're glass and then 3-sided. That does not bother her at all. She doesn't feel socially or emotionally anxious. It's been an overall very positive experience. From a parent's point of view, I don't think it could be going any better at this point. And then with my K4 kiddo, I had a little bit of a moment, because parents after the first day were encouraged not to walk the child in. Well, I think we walked my oldest into K4 at least halfway through the year. And I was just kind of taken aback, but she jumps out of the car line and walks in. And that's a habit we're not going to have to break, because it's been set in stone. She also knows the school very well. And then from a parent's point of view, it's been a little bit tough on me, because I'm used to being at school probably a little too much. I've been a room mom and helped with cross country. And I'm used to seeing the kids or being able to run stuff by for birthdays or if the teachers need a treat. And once again, parents are not allowed in the building, and there's no exception to that. And I respect that because that's safer for our kids. So I think they've done a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
And I will say, Shaka, that is probably, we pride ourselves on the relationship aspect. I've got 300 kids. I know every one of their names. I know their parents' names. That's important to us. We love the fact that our parents have traditionally been on our campus and our lunchroom is open, and there's never a day where there's not a mom, a dad, a grandma, a grandpa, aunt, uncle, cousin, somebody eating with students in our cafeteria. And we can't do that right now. And so we are longing for the day that we can safely have folks back on campus, but it's just not possible right now. We did allow parents on the first day of school because it's such an important day and it's just a big deal to walk their children. And we were up front. We said on day one, you can walk your child to class, but then after that, you got to use the car line or you got to drop off outside. And I got a few emails for some upset folks, but for the most part, parents have bought in and understand why.
Yeah. Yeah. What's something, so, so here we're streaming this and recording this on August 31st, Monday, August 31st. And like many states, schools open at different times, at different dates around the state, depending upon the district, public versus private, et cetera. My kids are starting week 5 here in the Nashville area. In West Tennessee, in Shelby County in Memphis, today's the first day of school. So you're, a few weeks ahead. What's something, Sean, that you'd say, and I know you're still, the life of a school administrator is, I like that word that Jennifer used. You're constantly pivoting to make sure your system is working best for your school community if it's not. But has there been anything in the past, sort of these first 2 weeks, they said, hey, that looked great on paper, but we actually need to tweak this. Once we were really doing it in practice, so for our friends who are in Shelby County who are starting today, what might be something that you would say, hey, actually keep this in mind. This is something that we learned.
It's funny you say that. We put a task force together. I've got teachers from just about every grade level that are on a task force, as well as our school nurse, our business manager. We've got a trustee trying to really look and formulate our plans. And we meet, it's been weekly for probably the last 5 or 6 weeks. In fact, we're meeting today after school. And one of the things when we developed our virtual learning plan, which we're using OWL camera systems, and there are lots of schools across the country are using those, and we've got those, and we tried to create a live virtual learning. It's not what we did back in the spring. One of the things we really wanted that we as administrators and teachers worried about was, okay, we're offering virtual. What if Shaka is a parent at Brainerd Baptist and wakes up on a Tuesday morning, they were out late Monday night at a ball game or traveling, and just says, we're just going to do virtual today. We didn't want that. We wanted virtual to be a commitment. Here locally, they're requiring parents to commit, I think either by 9 weeks or by semester. And we didn't.
The public school district is.
Yeah. Yeah. And we didn't see the need in that, but we also didn't want our teachers to have this undue stress of from day to day, somebody's opting in and out of virtual learning. And so we made it by the week, which we thought was great. And that makes sense in theory. But I had multiple kids last week who got sick. I had a kid that got strep throat. His entire family, his 2 older siblings that have graduated from Brainerd and are now at I think Macaulay and GPS, they had to stay home for 3 days. Well, the mom said, hey, we want to pivot to virtual so he doesn't miss any time.
Yeah.
That makes sense, but that's not the way our policy was written. Our policy was written, you decide this, if you're just going to be out a day or two, it's a lot of work to get it set up, get material, sit home, get it ready. And so we're trying to figure out, okay, we've got virtual in place. The teachers are doing it. There should be a way to do this and help families that all of a sudden have to pivot so to speak. We're all envisioning Ross and Friends episodes there, but there's got to be a way for us. We're working through trying now to balance. Okay, let's maybe back off on that original policy of you got to let us know on the Friday before what you're doing the following week. And it's a relatively small number of kids that are doing this. If the teacher can make it work and they've got materials, if there's a kid out and we're really driven by what's best for students,
Yep.
Kid wants to learn, the technology's there, we got to figure out a way to make that work. And so we're actually today, that's probably going to be a change that we're going to make from what we thought. And our intentions were good. We didn't want it to be abused. We didn't want people to kind of be wishy-washy and go back and forth. That's a valid concern, but that would be an example of something we're changing.
No, that's a great point. And I mean, I can imagine that, that from a parent standpoint, I mean, frankly, I want consistency too. So I would tell my children, you don't just get to pick based on whether or not you did or you didn't like breakfast doesn't dictate whether or not we're going to do in-person learning or remote, right? I'd want the consistency, but I can also see, another school leader mentioned this to me. They said, if we've got a really solid distance plan, we could eliminate snow days. Now, I know that's no fun. Kids don't want to hear that. We still want to have a little, maybe recess becomes sledding, right? But in a district, and I know Hamilton County is like this, you probably would have a situation where for a snow day, you've got some families that could make it in safely and some who couldn't. And if you've got a really robust plan, you could still deliver instruction to all families, which could be really cool.
I think we're starting to scratch the surface on what that looks like. Obviously, you've got to be cognitive and empathetic, but we're certainly reimagining what sick days look like and trying to think through. And I know, a lot of our kids, when they graduate from Brainerd Baptist, a lot of our kids go to Baylor, McCallie, and GPS, and we work very closely with those schools because we send so many kids to those schools. And even at their level, it's interesting when you hear the discussions between what does a sick day look like now? Do we put a sub in a class and have a teacher teach from home? Well, assuming that he or she feels well enough to do that, but if they're really sick, they may not be able to do that. But yeah, I think there's we're starting to reimagine what this may look like moving forward do we offer a virtual option that, we kind of talked at the beginning about micro schools. Do we offer a slimmed down version of our program to people that may be all over the country that could be interested in it? Who knows? We're starting to look through that, but there's a lot of things it's not as easy as it sounds. I can tell you that because I was ready to run with it and I threw it out there and got, well, what about this? What about this? Well, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. So we're working through that now.
Well, I know we're coming up on time, but I want to ask both Kate and Jennifer a different question, and then we'll close with you, Sean. So, Jennifer, I'm curious about sort of something that you're looking forward to in the spring semester. We're going to be optimistic, and we're going to say that there's going to be, that this virus will have subsided, whether because of distancing or masks or vaccines or providence. We're just going to name it. No more virus. So what's something that you're looking forward to, particularly for your kids in the spring semester?
I think just the normalcy that we were accustomed to at Brainerd Baptist pre-pandemic. Parents being at classroom parties, field trips, being able to come together in the halls and give hugs, or just the normal life, which is not anything huge, but just getting back to kind of what we were used to and enjoyed so much.
Yeah, some of that community sounds like. Yeah, which you've known for years with having a fourth grader. And Kate, to you, I mean, something I'm curious about, and you can answer that last question if you want, but especially since you've got kids who are just starting, they're in kindergarten, you had the option to presumably to go to local zone school, to a district school. I'm curious as to why you chose Brainerd, and particularly when it was so uncertain. I've got to think that the conversation at some point came up in your family, or at least in your own head, where you said, are we about to pay tuition for me to do lessons, in our kitchen? So how'd you make that choice?
That's a really big question, but the money was definitely a consideration. I mean, it's a dollar amount.
Yeah.
It is what it is, but we did not feel like the needs of our children, not that they're better than any other kids, but they are both used to a lot of individual attention, and we did not feel like their needs specifically, especially one of them, could be met we have a great primary school in my area. But I did not feel like they would get the one-on-one attention they would need. My husband and I both went to private schools. My dad was a headmaster at a private school, taught at a private school. We're both private school kids. So that it was not out of the norm for us to consider that. It took a long time for us to decide which private school was best for us and for our kids. We toured, there are a lot of private schools for elementary school in this town, and we toured a lot of them. Dr. Corcoran said that he knows every kid and every parent, and that's the absolute truth. And I saw the effort that was going into not just the rebuild. It's not just a facility, but I saw the effort going into the experience that the kids would get, and the experience the teachers would have and the parents would have. And we made this decision pre-COVID. And so for us, it was a huge draw. And kind of to answer what I'm looking forward to in the spring, should this not be an issue, I'm looking forward to being really involved. I already, every time something pops up to volunteer for it, I want to do it. I want to be involved. I don't want to be the class mom. Don't get me wrong. I just want to purchase things from Amazon and send them there. But I don't want to make the crafts, but I want to volunteer. I want to be involved with field trips. I want my kids to not have to wonder if they're going to get to go on that field trip, or if school's going to close, or what's going to happen. I just want some of the uncertainty to go away. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, great. No, thank you. And yeah, it's something we talk about a lot, is that even if you have a local school, a zone school, that by all accounts is a pretty good school, it still might not be just the right school for your needs and for your family, and that on a range of different
Right.
issues. Yeah, thanks for sharing that and kind of
Sure.
being vulnerable there. So Sean, we'll just wrap it up with you, and thank you so much for coming on and for introducing us to Jennifer and Kate and getting to hear a little bit about their stories. But what's the thing that you're looking forward to for the rest of this semester?
Well, our building, I say this all the time, our building comes to life with people in it. And it was a lonely place. We tried to make it fun. We filmed a series of what we would call little mini movies where I had some escapades with a doll, our Heimlich doll that our school nurse uses to teach the students how to do the Heimlich, kind of poking fun of the fact that it's a lonely place without students here.
Yeah.
And so while I love that we have students back and teachers back and just the energy that comes with that, that is really all that I need personally. I would love for things to be kind of, as Jennifer said, normal. We were meeting this morning and looking at activities that are just, that we're known for. Donuts with dads. Well, how do you do that? That's typically in the next 3 weeks. We
Right.
can't do that.
Right.
Thanksgiving luncheon, which is a big deal at Brainerd Baptist School. All the family comes and eats lunch, and our Christmas programs and things like that right now, our Christmas program, we'll have 1,500 people here that week for it's a big deal. There are things like that we haven't figured out. We haven't canceled anything in second semester, but first semester, it looks like a lot of those things that are just things that we're known for aren't going to be able to happen. And so to answer your question, I think just getting it started and getting students back. And the big thing for us and what we've told our faculty during in-service, we know that there's going to be students and faculty that test positive with COVID. That's going to happen. There's going to be exposures. We're going to take comfort in the fact that the data that we have that is updated, even this weekend, the CDC released a huge update to what that looks like, supports the fact that our kids should be in school. We're not going to panic. We're not going to overreact. We're going to deal with it the best we can. And we're going to try to make decisions that were 100% based on what's best for our students. And that's where we're going to kind of live in that middle lane and not focus on what this news story says and what this person says, and just try to do all we can to keep our students here, because this is where they want to be. And this is certainly where their parents want them to be.
Awesome. Well, I'd love to maybe check back in with you later on in the semester. I know that some of those cultural pieces, those school culture pieces, are so important at Brainerd Baptist. Would love to know, how you make those work and kind of how you modify things to make sure that stays a strong culture throughout the fall in the event that we've got to stay distance, because I know that's a big piece of it. Again, Sean, thank you so much. Kate, Jennifer as well. Wish you and your whole school community the best this semester. We're all hoping for continued health and safety, and that your kids would do well, and that your faculty as well stay safe and healthy too. So thanks for joining us on our second edition of Choice Chats. Hopefully we'll get some traction with these things and keep sharing the good news and sharing some of these bright spots. But we really appreciate it, and y'all have a great day.
Thanks, Shaka.